Welcome to QuickBooks 2014 for Nonprofits and Charities. My name is Becky Wiegand, and I'm an interactive events producer here at TechSoup. I've been with TechSoup for about 5.5 years, and prior to that worked for 3 different small nonprofits in Washington, D.C., and Oakland, California, and San Francisco, where I was an accidental techie having to solve lots of tech problems without a whole lot of tech expertise, including getting to use tools like QuickBooks and as a TechSoup user. So I would like to invite you to join us and ask questions throughout the webinar today. I'll be here to grab them along with Allie from TechSoup and Thomas also from our TechSoup Client Services team to answer them and grab them in the chat window. Feel free to ask them throughout. Our expert presenter today is Gregg S. Bossen, who is a CPA and is the CEO of QuickBooks Made Easy. They are one of our donor partners, and he provides really compelling, interesting, and engaging trainings on QuickBooks, how to use it, how to get the most out of it for nonprofits in live in-person trainings, and on his series of QuickBooks Made Easy materials that he creates and that we have available through TechSoup's website. And he also does them for webinars like this. So we're really glad to have him joining us today to share what's new in 2014 and to give us some highlights. So mentioning that, we'll look at the agenda quickly. I'll do a quick introduction of TechSoup. We'll have a couple of poll questions to see where you all are at in using QuickBooks, and that will help inform our presenter as to what he should spend some time on. If we have a lot of people who are brand new to QuickBooks or who are really experienced with it already, that can help guide our conversation a little bit. We'll get an introduction of QuickBooks Made Easy, look at the 2014 basics and new features, and then we'll talk about the donation programs that Intuit offers for QuickBooks products and QuickBooks Made Easy through TechSoup. We will have time for Q&A at the end, but we'll also try and make some time here and there throughout the webinar, so feel free to put those questions in any time. Who is TechSoup? We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we work to ensure that nonprofits, charities, public libraries, and foundations have tech products and services to help enable them to meet their missions. We've been around since 1987. We've distributed more than 11 million software and hardware donations in more than 60 countries around the world. We have a lot of new offerings that you might not be familiar with, including things like consulting services. We have the latest Windows 8.1. And we also have QuickBooks 2014 now available. You can find this and more on our website at TechSoup.org. Now that we've done a quick introduction of who we are, I want to learn a little bit more about you. So go ahead and interact with your screen by clicking on one of those radio buttons to let us know how much experience you have using QuickBooks. And it doesn't matter if it's the new one or an old version. Let us know by clicking those little radio buttons. I have a couple of people telling us that they're pros and they should be presenters, so maybe I'll have to follow up with you later. But it's really great to have you letting us know. We'll give just a few more seconds on this poll. We'll show the results here. So we have about 43% have been using it for more than a year, and about 25%, well, let's combine 25% of who have no experience and 16% who have none. So we have a pretty good split. And we know that in an hour-long webinar we won't be able to go into depth and answer everybody's needs around QuickBooks. So please expect that this will be an introduction. Some highlights of the new features might help you decide whether you need to upgrade sooner or later. And one more quick question. Let us know which version you're currently using if you are using one. Again, this just helps our presenter have an idea of where people are at. So I'm going to give just a few more seconds so everybody can have a chance to respond. And I'm going to go ahead and show results here. But if you haven't clicked yet, feel free to keep doing so. So about 20% on 2014. Quarter of you are on 2013. Imagine you're thinking about whether to upgrade or not to the latest version. and a sizable chunk who are on 2011 or earlier. So that's really helpful. And hopefully today's introduction and overview of 2014 will help those of you who are using a different tool or not using any tool decide whether QuickBooks might meet your needs. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our presenter today. I mentioned him briefly earlier. So Gregg Bossen is the CPA, or is a CPA and the founder and CEO of QuickBooks Made Easy, based in Atlanta, Georgia, and he's going to be joining us on the line right now. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today, Gregg.
No problem. Thank you, Becky. I appreciate the time that you spent on this. Hi, everybody. How are you? What you're looking at now is a picture of me, and I don't think I look exactly like that now. This was taken a couple of years ago. I like to think that I probably look better. I think that's a good idea. But anyway, you just assume you look better as you get older. Who knows? So I am a CPA, and I have an accounting practice in Atlanta, Georgia, and we specialize in nonprofit organizations. We probably have 80 or 90 clients that are nonprofits, both in Atlanta where I am, plus all over the country. I'm also an advanced certified QuickBooks Pro advisor, which means I'm considered an expert in the program. Again, I specialize in nonprofits. I'm also the owner of QuickBooks Made Easy, which is a company that basically is all about training people how to use QuickBooks in particular industries. The main industry that I like to focus on is nonprofits. And I do it because, well, people that are in the nonprofit world are just overall easier to deal with, I think. But anyway, so that's why I do it. So and now how do I do that? And let me just... I do that. How do I teach people how to use QuickBooks? We really three things. We have DVD training products. One of them is on TechSoup. It's called QuickBooks Made Easy: The Essentials, and then the others are on our website. We are going to give you discounts on purchasing those products. We'll mention the discount at the end of the little program here. We also offer a full year of tech support. So if you like listening to my voice and you feel like I can help you, I can be your tech support person for a year, and we'll give you a discount on that as well. And then finally, we teach live seminars across the country. And we don't go to tons of cities, but we do go to quite a few. These are some of the upcoming seminars. We're going to Tampa, Atlanta, San Francisco, and Hawaii, which I'm very excited about. And then we're going to Las Vegas. So that's some of the seminars that are coming up earlier in the year, in the next couple of months. And then here is some other places that we are going to be going to in the summer and in the fall. So I'll point out that if you are interested in seeing me live for the full day, I better be interesting now, right? But if you like me, then you can go to the website and sign up for one of the seminars, and we'll mention that again at the end. So we only have an hour, so let's talk. So the first thing is, I'm glad you guys answered that poll question. Becky, it looks like half of these people are pretty much brand new to QuickBooks. Close to 50% are 3 months or less. So, and there's a number of people that have never used it. So just so that you understand, QuickBooks is a financial software package. It is meant to do all things bookkeeping related. So it will create your financial statements for you compared to budgets. You enter your checks, you enter your deposits in it. You can print your checks. It'll track accounts receivable and accounts payable. If you're a membership association or you are a school, or for whatever reason you're invoicing people, you can do it right out of QuickBooks. It'll also track your payroll and accept credit cards. That is an add-on. They cost money, extra money to do that. The basic QuickBooks will do all this other stuff. Okay. It will also work as a light donor database. So if you are a nonprofit organization, you don't have an outside donor base, QuickBooks will actually work pretty well. I spend quite a bit of time explaining this to you in the training product, showing you how you can get donor reports, donor history. You can get year-end donor letters out of QuickBooks. We're actually going to touch on that during this seminar. And it looks like there's some people here from Canada, which is cool. I'm seeing more and more people from Canada, so that's neat. All right, so enough of that. So I should tell you, if your budget is, say, $5 million or less, QuickBooks is probably fine for you. I would say 89% of all small businesses in this country are using QuickBooks, and that percentage is higher for nonprofits. So it's pretty much the go-to software. All right. All right, so what are we going to be covering today? So I think there's kind of two pockets of people that are listening to me right now. A lot of you are brand new to QuickBooks. You're going to need some basics. And then there are those of you that are upgrading, that have been using QuickBooks for a while. You've upgraded to 2014 and you want to know about the new features. Well, let me tell you two things. One, there's not that many new features in 2014. And two, the features that are new, there's only a few of them that are really helpful for nonprofits, so that's what we're going to be covering. The donor letter has been around for a long time. Byron, he wanted to know if the donor letter is new in 2013. You can do it in 2014. You can do it in 13 as well. Boy, Canadians are very excited. All right, so I'm getting chat from that. So anyway, what we're going to cover is we're going to cover some basics, and as we go through the basics, we're going to look at new features that relate to the basics that I'm talking about. So for instance, we're going to look at how to navigate through the screens, which means how do you get around in the software, how do you get to the right checks window, for instance, for those of you that are new. But they changed the way the navigation looked. And you know what? I'm assuming that a lot of you that upgraded to 2014 probably upgraded from 2012 or older. Most people don't upgrade every year. And they made a fairly significant change to the way the screens look between 2012 and 13. So we're going to look at these changes. Changes to the icon bar, the view balances window, and some other things as well. So after we look at kind of like the overall main screen that you look at in QuickBooks, then we're going to go through some basic stuff, setting up accounts, programs, and donors or members. And that's going to be mostly for the people that are brand new to the software. However, I do run across people that have been using it for years that don't understand that you're supposed to use a classes feature to track your programs. So anyway, let's see. Karen wants to know if you can run multi-user in the Mac environment, and I believe that you can. I don't know that answer. Sometimes I don't know an answer. Usually I just make it up. But if you contact me later, I'll make sure to give you an appropriate answer. Okay, so after we look at setting things up, we're going to look at entering just some common transactions like checks and bills. And I want to point out a new transaction ribbon that's new in version 2013 and 14. And so after we look at some common transactions related to expenses, then we're going to look at some common transactions related to income. Basically how to enter your donations, your membership dues, your student tuitions, and stuff like that. And there's some new stuff that's really cool in terms of how, if you would like to use QuickBooks as a donor, member, or student database, how you can email forms directly to your donors, including that donor thank you letter that I wanted to talk about. I will. And there are some other things that are kind of cool in 2014. And the last thing we're going to cover is the downloading of transactions, which is something that you could do where you download transactions from the bank, but we're going to make this, they've made it a lot easier in 2014, so I think it's really important that we point that out. So that's kind of what we're going to cover, and with that I am going to get started. So does anybody have any big question now? No, I don't think so. Okay, so I'm going to click Share. And right now you should be looking at QuickBooks. So I'll give it a second. And Becky, is everybody looking at QuickBooks now?
It looks like QuickBooks to me. Feel free to chat out in the window if you're not seeing things along the way, and I'll make sure that we slow down if we need to.
And understand, guys, that I cannot see your chat. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be stopping every few minutes and saying, do we have any questions? And then Becky's going to feed them to me, and then I will make up incorrect answers for you.
Yep, and I also just chatted out in the window that if people want to be able to see a little more clearly, they can click full screen on their page to do that so that it zooms in. And then down in your lower right, you'll see an option to exit full screen if you want to get back to the window where you can chat to us. Okay? So take it away, Greg.
Awesome. So if you're new to QuickBooks, listen up. Okay? I want you to feel comfortable with the software, right? So the first thing that I want you to see is this is a screen that you will be looking at when you are in QuickBooks. And the very first thing at the top of the screen here, can I move this out of the way? Okay. The very first thing at the top of the screen here is called the title bar. And that is not new. When there's a new feature, I'll point it out. The title bar tells you that we are using QuickBooks Premier Nonprofit. Let me explain to you that it does not matter whether you are using the Nonprofit edition of QuickBooks or some other edition of QuickBooks. You could have QuickBooks Pro, You could have another edition of QuickBooks Premier. You could have something called QuickBooks Enterprise Solutions. And yes, you could have QuickBooks for the Mac, and your screen's going to basically look the same. Now, if you are using the online edition, I want you to chat online. And Becky, I want you to let me know how many people do that in a few minutes, because the online edition people, your screens do look a little bit different. You're going to be able to do everything that we explain here, but some things you'll have to go to different places for, and your screen does look different, your main screen. So that's the title bar. Everything else that you are seeing on the screen, guys, is just a way of getting around in the software. In other words, you opened it up. You want to get to the right checks window as an example. How do you get there? There are 3 ways. One is you could use this big flow chart here, which is called the home page. You do not have it in the online edition, I'm sorry, but everybody else does. And it is a flow chart to major tasks that you'd like to perform. I'm going to click on the right checks. There's a picture of a check that pops up. You fill it out. Please be aware that this is check number 1004. I don't want you to forget that. All right, so the second way of, I don't know why that's not going away. That's weird. All right. The second way of entering a transaction or getting to a transaction window is this big fat bar here, which is called the icon bar or the tool bar. Okay? Now this bar has been around for years. However, they changed it when they moved from 2012 to 2013. So I'm going to pop up 2012 real quick. Do you see how it's white and it has pretty little colors on it? Well, in 2013 and 14, it's not pretty. It's not colored. It's black and white. Okay, people did not like that, so they added a preference midway through the year last year. Edit, preferences. Preferences are little features you can turn on or off in the program. There are so many preferences that they're broken up into different categories. But if I click on the desktop view, you'll see one that says switch to colored icons and light background on top icon bar. So when I check that box, this looks pretty again. So for those of you that upgraded and you're used to using 12 and you're used to seeing it pretty, and then you open up 13 or 14 and it looks like that, you can do that. Okay, but it's very much the same thing as the home page. It's just shortcuts to major tasks. If I click check, notice how this same check popped up, check 1004. So it's basically the same window. So these are just different places, different ways of getting to the same window in QuickBooks. Now they made another change to this icon bar in 2013 and after, and that is that you can, if you'd like to, you ready? Put it on the left-hand side. Now it's on the left-hand side, and most likely this is what your 2013 or 14 looks like when you first open it up. Since they have it to where you can put it on the left-hand side, they're assuming you want it on the left-hand side because it's a new thing. You don't have to do that. If you want to move it back up top, you just move it back up top, and we already saw how to change the color. Now one thing that's cool about having it on the left-hand side relates to this window right here called Account Balances. What this window does is it basically gives you your balances in your bank account, your checking account, and any credit card accounts, savings accounts, and accounts payable and receivables. So all your bank accounts, your credit card accounts, and payables and receivables, it gives you there. But you can't control what balances, what accounts appear. You can't customize this. Now, in 2014, you can customize what balances appear. That's a new change in 2014. You can't do it here, but what happens is if you take the icon bar and move it to the left-hand side, you see this View Balances. If you click it, your View Balances appear within the icon bar, and you can control by clicking Customize which balances you want to appear. So say I want to see an income account for individual contributions. I'll add it, and I'll move it to where it is right below the checking account. Let me move it down one, and I'll click OK. And so now I see it. So you used to not be able to do this in 2014. You can control what balances appear. I don't know that it's that big of a deal, but for those of you that are used to using this thing up here, Now you can change it. Not here though, only if you have the icon bar on the left-hand side. Got it? I'm assuming that they do. And I think that is it. I think that's all I need to say about that. Oh, the third way of getting around is this thin bar up here. It's called the menu bar. The menu bar is going to give you every single thing that QuickBooks does. So it's organized by area. So people that have been using it for a while, using QuickBooks for a while, can use the icon bar. If you go under banking, everything's by area. You'll see write checks, and look, there it is, check 1004. Okay? So just to review, this is called the title bar. This is the menu bar. This is the icon bar, and this is the home page. And all three of these things are just different ways of getting to the same place in the program. Let's do some questions. Does anyone have any questions?
Yep, we have a couple that have come in. I'll go ahead and just throw a couple of them at you. So Karen asks, is there a way to run a multi-user QuickBooks in a Mac environment? And I think you said you thought that was the case.
Yeah,
is that the one that we already?
I need to find an answer to that question. So let me get back to her on that.
Sure, that's fine. I didn't know if we'd already asked that one. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We also have Natasha asking, can I upgrade from 2010 to 2014? If my 2010 is on a PC, will I be able to transfer to my Mac? Okay,
both of those answers are yes. QuickBooks will convert from PC to Mac or vice versa, and it's very easy to upgrade. All you do for a new version, you simply open up the new version, and then once you're in the new version, you simply open up the old data file. You just point it, you click File, you click Open Company, you open up wherever the data file is. So you just find the old data file and you open it up. And when you do that, it'll convert it so that it can be read in the new version. So it's pretty easy. In terms of converting from PC to Mac, can I tell you not to do that? Only because PC is still better than Mac. Not in general, but just as it relates to QuickBooks. But here we are. Copy company file for QuickBooks Mac. Okay, so enough said. One more question, then we'll move.
Sure. So Sherry asks, are donor letters available in the 2012 version of the software? Might have to jog your memory to think back to that.
No. We're going to get to donor letters in a second. It's not something that QuickBooks really does. It's something that you create yourself. I'm going to show you how I created it real quickly, but it takes about 20 minutes to teach. So you'll get what I mean. But yeah, it's been around for years. All right?
Okay, great.
So let's move. So this is going to be for the new users of QuickBooks, so listen up very carefully, okay? When you are new to QuickBooks, let me just say this. The whole purpose of accounting is to create two reports. I'm going to pop up these two reports. One of them is called the profit and loss. Some people call it the income statement. The other report is called the balance sheet. So this is kind of like a little lesson in accounting for a second here. The whole purpose of accounting is to enter transactions so they end up on these two reports. These reports are really important, don't you think? Particularly the profit and loss, because you usually show that to the board of directors compared to budget, correct? You have your income accounts, you have your expense accounts. So before you ever start using QuickBooks, it's important that you get your data file set up correctly. So what that means is you want to have your chart of accounts set up correctly. And I saw a couple of chats about people that are wanting to set up their chart of accounts. They're brand new. When you go to set up a company in QuickBooks, and to do that you just click File, New Company, it's going to give you a set of income and expense accounts based on an industry that you tell it. You'll tell it you're in the nonprofit industry, and it picks some accounts for you. They're obviously not going to be correct. They'll be pretty okay, but you'll want to make changes. So to set up your chart of accounts, and you can see how important it is because the lines on this chart, they come directly from the chart of accounts list. The chart of accounts list is up here, Lists, Chart of Accounts. So once you set up your company, you're going to want to go into the Chart of Accounts list. You're going to want to review the accounts. You're going to add some that you need, take away things that you don't need because these are going to be suggested ones. And what I want to do, I don't have a whole lot of time here. In my live training and on the QuickBooks Made Easy, I go into great detail about what your income and expense accounts and your balance sheet accounts should look like. But I just want to point out a couple of things really quickly here. For income accounts, you want to have major categories of income. Notice how I have one for individual, corporate, foundation, and government grants. What I do not have, guys, is a separate income account for each grantor. That would be crazy. Let me tell you something. When you're setting up your chart of accounts, you want a small set of income and expense accounts. The reason why is because if you have a lot of income and expense accounts, then when you go to print this P&L for the board, it'll be 5 pages long and the board won't look at it. Maybe you don't want them to look at it, I don't know. But the point is that if they don't look at it, it's going to come back to bite you later on if there's money problems, I promise you. So you want to give them a profit and loss that's no more than 1 page, maybe 2 at the top. So I'll give you 2, no more than 2. What does that mean? It means you can't have very many income or expense accounts, which means if there's another place to track something, don't use the chart of accounts list for it. Okay? So when it comes to income, there is another list to track who gives you your money. It's called the customer list. Do not have a separate grantor in here. You got it? So just lump categories: individual, foundation, corporate, government, and then whatever income you have. I have membership dues. You might have tuitions, program fees, what have you. Major categories. Okay?
Hey Greg, before you
Yes.
move off this screen, we had Gay asked, how did you get it to do the split screen with the 2 items on the same screen like that?
Okay. Well, let me just say 2 things. If you want more than one thing on the screen, the first thing you want to check is you want to go to View, and you want to make sure this says multiple windows and not one window. So you want to make sure it says multiple windows. The second thing is when you then have more than one thing on a screen, you go over to this window thing and you click either tile vertically or tile horizontally. QuickBooks will attempt to make it look good for you. Let's see what it does when I click tile vertically here. It didn't do such a good job. So it only really works well when you have 2 windows up. So I would just go for moving things around again. God, I wish I could undo what I just did. But anyway, so hopefully that answers the question. The other thing, so where was I? Okay, so I was talking about the income accounts. Let's talk about the expense accounts and what those should be. Now this is the thing that's most important, so listen up. And this is everybody needs to listen up because a lot of people make this mistake. Nonprofits need to track their expenses in 2 ways. 1, they need to tell QuickBooks what the natural category of expense is. By natural category, I mean things like this. Okay, salaries, payroll taxes, health insurance, rent. I call it natural because if you just went out on the street and asked somebody to name some expense accounts, well, I guess it depends upon what street you go on, but these are the accounts that they'll probably come up with, just normal accounts. That's one way that nonprofits have to track their expenses. What's the other way that nonprofits have to track their expenses? They have to know what something it relates to. What if it relates to a what? And why don't you text the answer, and Becky, let me know what you're getting. Not only you have to know what it is, health insurance, rent, but you have to know whether it relates to a what? Anybody giving you an answer?
I have program.
There, that's it, program.
Grant, program.
Well, okay, well grant's the other one, and I hear you guys. So
Funding
the other
source.
thing that I wanted to point out is that you have to tell it what program it relates to. Do not use this list for programs, okay? What you want to do is you want to make these the natural categories of expenses, and then the second list that you're going to want to work on is the class list. You have to turn the class list on. To do it, you go to Edit, Preferences, Accounting, Company, Use Class Tracking. All right. If you have this checked off, then you will have a new list called the class list, and you want to put your programs there. Okay. So this organization is all about getting us on environmentally friendly energy here in America. So it's called Synergy Now. And then we have 3 programs here: the Guidance Center, the Synergy Conference, the Aware Campaign. Those are the programs in service of the mission. So you want to set up each program as a class. If you don't know what your programs are, I guarantee you somebody does at your organization because they're asking grantors for money for those programs. They probably have a flyer And then you always want to have an additional one for admin and a fifth and a last one for fundraising. So everybody listening to me will have a class for admin and fundraising, and then you will have one for each one of your programs. You may only have one program. This organization has 3. So you've bought yourself a little extra work because, and to set up a new program, you just go here and click New and just fill it out. Same thing with setting up an account, I should tell you. Here's the account list, bottom left-hand button, New. Pick the type, click Continue, name it. So it's pretty simple to set up an account. But you bought yourself a little work when you use classes, because now every time you enter a transaction, not only do you got to tell it what expense account it was, postage and delivery, but you also have to tell it what program it related to. This was for the Guidance Center. And yes, you can point one single transaction. You can split it between different classes. All right? So, but the benefit of that is that then, this is the coolest part of all, I'm going to go to Reports, Company and Financial, P&L by class. And then what you're going to end up with, and I know that there's people that are listening or looking saying, wow, that's what I needed. What it is, it looks like a little spreadsheet. And the rows are the expense and the income accounts. And then the columns are program, Go Green Guidance Center, Synergy Conference, Aware Campaign. And what I want you to understand, listen up right now, not only are you going to point your expenses to classes, you want to point your income to classes as well. All of the grants, all the program fees that are earmarked for the Guidance Center, I'm going to put right here in this column. I'm going to point it to the Go Green Guidance Center class, so it's in this column. So only the revenue related to the Guidance Center is here, and then all of the expenses are there. So you end up being able to see whether the Guidance Center made or lost money. You can see which programs are paying for themselves. That's what's cool. Okay? Now, somebody talked about what grant it was paid out of. I know a number of you are wanting to track restricted grants in QuickBooks. There's a whole chapter on that on QuickBooks Made Easy, the Essentials, which is going to be offered by TechSoup, which we'll talk about at the end. But what you're going to want to do is you want to put your restricted grants in the customer list. So I'm going to click on Customers. And customers are the people that give you your money. So if you would like to use QuickBooks as a donor, member, or student database, then you want to put your donors, members, and students in the customer list, and you would also put your restricted grants in the customer list. And I'm just going to point this out since we got people talking about grants. So when you enter a transaction, you'd put the expense account here. You'd put the program here, and you'd put the grant that it was paid out of here. And then in the training product, it explains to you how you can do a profit and loss for a class, but you can also do a profit and loss for a grant, which is going to be this one here. All right, let's stop for a second. Take some more questions.
Okay, we have a lot of great questions coming in, Gregg. So we have Cheryl asking, can I compare income and expenses from a class list and in a graph form? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so income and expenses, she wants it in a graph form. So they have this thing under reports. Is it under company? Net worth graph. Let's see here. So there's a graph. And I don't have time to play with it here, but I believe that you can customize this thing with classes. I need to... That's assets and liabilities. I need one for income and expenses. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is, income and expense graph. There it is. And then look, you can do it by class. So play around with this, and it'll give you your answer. Next question.
Great. So we have Jackie asking, can I access QuickBooks from 2 desktops and 1 laptop? Is there a way to network it or access it from several locations?
Yes. Listen. So here's the deal. There's the legal answer, and then there's the technical answer. So basically, A license, when you buy QuickBooks, you can buy a multi-user license or a single-user license. A single-user license can be used by one person. Now that one person can use it on their home computer and their office computer, or an office computer and a laptop. It has to be one person. Once you have more than one person using QuickBooks, you're supposed to get separate licenses, which are basically separate copies of QuickBooks. Now they have a multi-user license where it's only one download, but it has up to 3 users, and then you can buy additional ones. And then what happens is, yes, you network it. You load the program on each one of the computers, and then whatever computer is functioning as the server, you put the data file on that server. And then from your each workstation, you click File, Open Company, and then you direct it to go to the server. Okay? This is my server here. I'm not working in that server, but I could conceivably click on that one and find a data file and then open it up. You have to have separate licenses in order to have more than one person in the program at the same time. Okay? Next
Great.
question.
Thanks for that. And we'll cover a little bit about the donations available through TechSoup of QuickBooks later on as well.
Okay.
So Delphine asks a sort of similar question but somewhat different. Can you have multiple versions of QuickBooks on one computer? Like could they have one computer running 2012 and 2014?
Of course you can. And as you might imagine, I do. Here's 2012. Here's 2013. This is 2014. If you are an accountant, you're going to end up having multiple users versions of the program. Yes, you can. It's just that when you install it, you have to make sure to tell it not to do the express install, because if you do that, it will override the previous version. So I'm going to move on because we only have like 20 minutes left. So a couple of things here. We're going to go into transactions. So listen up, everybody. Basic transaction rules, okay? First, we're going to talk about money going out of QuickBooks, or money going out of your organization. In other words, entering and paying bills. Now, you have two options here. What some people do is when bills come in the mail, they click Enter Bills right here, and they enter the bill right here. Here's a bill that I entered. Postage and Delivery Guidance Center. It was paid for out of the Marvel Foundation, blah, blah, blah. Then when they pay the bill, what people do wrong, this is for new users, ding, 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 listen up. You saw how to enter a bill. I mean, we didn't get into the details. But when it comes time to pay a bill, you better push this button. Because if you do that, it allows you to check off bills to pay selected bills, you're good. What you do not want to do, if you've entered the bill, is you do not want to go to the write check screen, because if you do that, the QuickBooks won't know the bill has been paid. Instead, you go to the Pay Bills screen. Okay? Check it off, and then you can either print a check or you can hand write it. Either way. Okay? And you should print your checks. They're pretty cool. New feature, ding, 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 for 2013 and 14 has to do with these transaction windows, like the Enter Bills window or the Write Checks window. All right. Look at this Write Checks window. Now I'm going to open up the window in 2012 and older. Look at how this window looks compared to this window. This window, everything is bigger, easier to read. This window, it's smaller. But the main thing I wanted to point out is you see this little tiny thin bar up here? This is called the transaction ribbon. The goal is to give you things that you might want to do related to this check. Now, in 2012 and older, I could go back to an older one, or I could go to a newer one. I could save it, print it, find a new check, or attach a document. That's it. Look at all the stuff that you can do in 2013 or 14. Okay? I can delete a check. Say I want to delete this check because it's never going to clear. I can delete it. I can also void it. Okay? I can create a copy of it. I can memorize it. I can do all kinds of things. Now, let me just tell you, you could do those things in the older versions of QuickBooks. It's just that it wasn't right here in the transaction ribbon. In other words, if you wanted to delete a check in 2012, you'd have to just know that you go up to Edit. Here's where you delete. Here's where you duplicate. Here's where you memorize. Here's where you void. Here's where you copy. So now in 2013 and 14, it just is easier for the new users because it's all right up here on the window. Okay? So I'm going to stop for a second. I know I've only gone for a second, but I'm going to stop. and I'm going to ask if anybody has a couple questions since we're in the enter bills, pay bills thing before we move on.
Sure. We have, let me just scroll down here so I can see some of the questions that are
all about
bill related.
Well,
yeah,
whatever.
We have a lot of questions. How do you set up quick bookkeeping for returned checks? Cheryl asks.
Okay, a check that was returned by a check that was returned from a vendor, or it depends.
Let's assume that. It doesn't give more detail.
Okay, so if you write a check, or if you get a check in and it comes back, you get a check in and it comes back bad, there's a whole series of steps that you have to go through, and I don't have time to teach that right now. I'm sorry. But if you email me, I'm going to give you contact information. We can get into the details later. What's the next question? Give me an easier one.
Sure, sorry. So Julie asks, and actually quite a few people ask about QuickBooks Online. So it's not directly related to paying bills, but there's a theme around this, whether it's a better solution for multiple users without a server, or a couple of people have heard that it's to stay away from QuickBooks Online, that it's not as good. So what's your opinion on that?
Okay. Now I have to be careful here. So I'm going to give you the spiel. So here's the deal. The online edition at this point looks very different than the desktop edition. It also doesn't have all of the bells and whistles that the desktop edition does. Okay? If you are going to get the online edition, by the way, you have to have Online Plus. You cannot get the basic. You have to get Plus, which costs more money, but that gives you the ability to put things to programs because it has the class feature and the customer feature so you can track restricted grants. Now, should you use it? Well, people use the online edition because you can get to it anywhere in the country. You don't have to have QuickBooks loaded on a computer. You just dial in to get there. You also don't have to worry about backing up and all this kind of stuff. So it is kind of cool, but the downside is you're really going to be missing out on a lot of the neat features that QuickBooks has. Okay? So you're not going to find very many nonprofits with the online edition because nonprofits have a lot of extra needs that other businesses don't have, and the reporting's not as good with the online edition. So, however, okay, if I'm on this call 5 years from now, guys, 80% of you are going to be on the online edition. So they're going to keep trying to make it better. I would say let's hang for a year or so, and then Intuit's going to kill me because they want everybody to go to the online edition now. But I'm kind of telling my peeps to wait. All right? So, and if you want to have people dial in, you can do it through remote access. So hopefully that'll answer your questions. I'm going to move since I want to get to this other thing. Well, I want to talk about revenue. And so the deal with income, how do you enter your income? Depends. If you want to use, if you have another software package that you are using to track your donations in, or your membership dues or your tuitions, you have another donor database like Donor Perfect or GiftWorks, which I think are partners, aren't they, with TechSoup, or any number of other Salesforce. I mean, there's all kinds of other softwares out there that people use as donor databases. If you don't want to use QuickBooks as a donor database, how do you enter your income? You go into the record deposit window and you enter it right here. Okay, pretty easy to do. You just put in I like to lump them by income account. No sense in entering each check because you're tracking that in the other software package, individual contributions, $2,500. We got 4 checks that total that. Just got to make sure this equals what you're depositing in the bank. Okay. Now, if, however, most of you probably are smaller and want to use QuickBooks as a donor database. Now, this is a big deal, so listen carefully. If you want to use QuickBooks as a donor, member, or student database, you're going to be using primarily this button right here. It says Donations. The only reason why it says Donations is because we're in the Nonprofit edition. If you have QuickBooks Pro or QuickBooks for the Mac or some other edition of QuickBooks, it's not going to say Donations. It's going to say Sales Receipt. It's the same thing, guys. As a matter of fact, here I am in the Nonprofit edition. It says Donations. I click on it. and what you see is a sales receipt. Okay. Now the reason why you're going to want to use the sales receipt is because this is the best place to enter information for each donor. This particular donor, Jessica, gave me a check for $556. It's a contribution for $125, and it's unrestricted. So all unrestricted contributions I don't want to put to a program. I just put them to fundraising. And this form right here is how you'll enter your individual donations, okay, or membership dues or what have you. If you use this form, you're going to be able to get all kinds of neat reports out of QuickBooks that will effectively be a cool QuickBooks donor database. We'll just click on this one report. Basically what I'm looking at is a list of all of my donors and how much they gave me. I can sort it by dollar amount. It's going from the least to the greatest. But if you look at the little A to Z here, if I click it, it changes to Z to A. Now I've got the greatest to the least. I can make the columns by year, so I can look at like patterns over the years. There's not a whole lot of patterning going here, but you get the idea. So there are also other really neat reports. But in order to use these reports, one of them is to get your year-end donor acknowledgement letter, which I teach you how to do in the Beyond the Essentials, but it requires this report. But none of these reports, in fact, most of the reports in QuickBooks for your customers will be helpful unless you use this sales receipt thing. And we get in more to how to use it in the training, in the Essentials training. But here's the donor letter piece that people were asking about. All right, so just listen carefully. I'm telling you that when you get a check in the mail or somebody pays you by credit card, I want you to enter it here in the sales receipt. So you have a separate one for each donor. Okay? Now you might say, well, that's kind of a pain. Well, I mean, hey, if you want to use QuickBooks as a donor database, you got to use these forms. What's neat about it is you can send these forms to your donor, member, or student. Okay? The IRS requires anybody who gives you $250 or more gets some sort of donor acknowledgement from you. Now you could wait till the end of the year and do a report. You can do it out of QuickBooks, but what I suggest is that you do it during the year, and not just for people that give you more than $250, but for everybody. Come on, they gave you money. Let's reach out and touch them. What you really want to do is give them a thank you letter. Wouldn't it be neat if when you printed this thing, it looked like a thank you letter? Well, if you click Print, Preview, it does not look like a thank you letter. It looks hideous. All right? We want to turn it into a thank you letter. Well, what you can do is you can create your own template. And templates are basically just the way that these print out. And I have 4 different options here. I created one called Synergy Thank You Letter. QuickBooks does not have this. You'll need to create it, but you can do it in version 2012. You can do it in 2010. Okay? You've been able to do it for years. I'm going to change to that template, and look what it looks like when you pop this out of the printer. Isn't this neat? Thank you so much for your donation of $125, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So what the point is my clients, they enter each receipt here, and then they click on the template, and when it prints as a letter. So you don't have to do the letters some other software package. It's right in here. Now the other thing that's neat, and this is new for 2014, so listen up. These things can be emailed. Okay? Now they've been able to be emailed for years, but they added some new features to the email. I'm going to say that I want to email this. So think about it. You're sitting at the computer, you're entering the receipt, you email them immediately, and then you're finished. You've satisfied your the IRS requirement of notifying the donor. So when I click email the sales receipt, this is basically the body of the email. So it's coming from me. It's going to the donor, and this address is an address that you can put when you're setting up the customer in the customer list. And what happens is that letter will be an attachment. Okay, it'll be an attachment right there. And then there'll be, these are the words that are in the body of the email. All right? Now, these words are not what you'd want to say. Your sales receipt is attached. Thank you for your business. You don't want to do that, okay? So you can change this letter. So I'm going to click Cancel. Now you could change it just for this one individual person, but you want it changed globally so you don't have to keep changing it each time. So if you go into Edit, Preferences, and you go to Send Forms, and you go to Company, and you go to Sales Receipt. This is the basic sales receipt that you get when you get QuickBooks, and the words that appeared there are right here. Okay? Now you'd think you could just edit it right here by typing some stuff, but when you go to save, it's going to tell you that it's a stock template and it can't be changed. So instead what you want to do is add a template. So we'll just add a template. I'll call it Donor Thank You Email. Okay? And then this is the subject line. So we probably don't want to say sales receipt. I'll just say thanks from, well, already says from. And then, and here's the thing that's new in 2014. You see these insert fields? You can insert fields onto this, like the transaction total. So I can say something like, thanks for your donation of, and then you can insert the transaction total. Okay? Now, this feature is new in 2014, and they don't have all the kinks worked out yet. On this sales receipt, it still doesn't work. It does work on the invoice screen, though. So those of you that invoice out of QuickBooks, your email letter will include it. I imagine within the next few months this will be corrected, and the insert fields will actually work. Donation. So
Greg, Jody asks, if you have a list of 1,000 emails and donors, do you have to enter each of them individually, or can you import them from something like Google Contacts?
Oh, if you've got a bunch of, yeah, you can import, and let me show you that in a second. So I'm going to click Save, and what I want to show you is now when we go and we say we want to email a letter, now it says thanks for your donation, blah, 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 and then it's attached. Another new thing that's new in 2014 is when you email this thing to the donor, you didn't used to be able to attach anything other than the receipt itself, which we turned into a letter. But now in 2014, you see the paperclip? You can add additional attachments. So I'm not sure what you might want to send to the donor besides the receipt, maybe some sort of a notice of something else. We'll send a picture of a koala bear, and we click Open, and now they're going to get both of those things. And you click Send Now, and it sends it. Another thing that is new for 2014, listen very carefully, is when you email, you've been able to email for years. Those of you in 2012 could email these receipts in 2012, but QuickBooks would not track what you emailed. New in 2014, when I go to this Jessica here, when I go to her customer list, and now here we are on the customer list, and I'll go to Jessica. Here she is. You're going to see a new tab called Sent Email, and it's going to give you information about any emails that were sent. We didn't send one to her yet because I canceled out of it, but we did send one to these people, and here it is. Okay? So that's a new feature in 2014. Now, she wanted to know, and I know a lot of you do, if you have a bunch of customers that you want to put into QuickBooks, you can either do them individually by going into Customers and clicking New Customer and filling it out. However, what you can do is go to Lists, Add, Edit Multiple List Entries, and this looks like an Excel spreadsheet with all my customers on it, and I can cut and paste right from Excel right into QuickBooks by just going down to the bottom here. You do a copy from Excel, and then you right-click here and click Paste, and it'll paste anything you want to in these columns. Got to make sure these columns match the columns in your Excel spreadsheet, but you can do 10,000 of them if you want to. Okay? All right. The only other thing I want to say, and then I have to stop because we're close to 3, is that the online banking feature has been greatly improved. QuickBooks allows you to download transactions. You've been able to do it for years. They changed it in 2014 and made it a little bit easier. You go to Banking. You go to Bank Feeds. They changed the title of it. And then You set up your account. It's free to do. It's very easy, and then you can download transactions. This is good for credit cards or debit cards if you have a bunch of them that you have to enter. I'm just going to go right into the Bank Feed Center, and I'm going to show you. This is a list of a bunch of transactions that I've downloaded, and here's where I can simply assign these transactions to an account and to a class, and when you're done, you click Quick Add, and it'll add it. It's a great way to add transactions to your data file without having to
we are almost at time to wrap up, but I want to go ahead quickly and just mention the different donations available through TechSoup's program with Intuit. They make available 2 different editions, the QuickBooks Premier Edition's single user license or the 3 user license, and then QuickBooks for Mac. So if you are looking to upgrade or if you're looking to move to using QuickBooks, we have the 2014 editions available for users in the United States. If you're joining us from someplace outside the United States, you should check TechSoupGlobal.org and see if we have a donor partner in your respective country. We know we had a few people from Canada asking, and they do have some QuickBooks versions available through their donation program. And there are also donations through the Intuit program of Quicken, which somebody just mentioned that they use Quicken as well, both in individual software for yourself, but also if you work for, say, a library or a public computing center and you want to make Quicken available to your patrons, we have bundled packages of Quicken that can be shared with your community that you serve. And then to mention QuickBooks Made Easy, Gregg has been generous in offering that as both a donation and a discount program based on your organization's budget size. So you can visit our website. Currently we are waiting for stock to still come in. Gregg has been updating what he has to the 2014 version, and we expect those in the next couple of weeks. And so we will actually email the people who've attended today's webinar just one email through ReadyTalk in a couple of weeks when we have that stock in, just to let you know that it's here in case you want to access the essentials, donation, or discounted products of QuickBooks Made Easy for Nonprofits. We have exhausted our time, and we did get through quite a few questions, and I know we have a lot more that we weren't able to answer. So feel free to contact Gregg as he recommended and learn more through that, and feel free to come to TechSoup's website and you can ask questions about QuickBooks in our funding forum. You can register if you haven't yet and get these product donations for your organization. I'd like to go ahead and thank our presenter today. Gregg, thank you so much for that. I know it was quick. We covered a lot, and fortunately people will get that email later today so they can view the recording at their convenience and watch it in slow motion if need be to get the gist of what was covered.
And let's give them my email address so they can contact me directly.
Sure. I'll include that in the follow-up email as well so people can reach out to Gregg directly with those questions we didn't get to. Thank you all so much, and I'd like to also thank our webinar sponsor ReadyTalk, which makes the use of this platform available to us so we can present these webinars to you on a weekly basis. Thank you so much, and join us again soon. Please take a moment to complete the post-event survey that will help us improve our webinar programs to come. Thanks so much, and have a great day, everyone.